Good afternoon. Just thought I'd do a quick stream. Sorry I've been inactive yet again because I'm going away tomorrow for a month, so I have to pack and everything, but I wanted to do a quick stream before I went, although there isn't a great deal to say, but mainly just to go over the alt alerts that I've had for the last few days, which I haven't updated. And alts have been a bit more hit and miss over the last few days. They have been getting reactions, but not as big as previously, because obviously prices have been somewhat changing direction / ranging, or at least bouncing and correcting previous drops. So shorts have become slightly less reliable and longs have become slightly more reliable. Anyway, yeah, just quickly on TradFi. So again, you know, the dollar is still just going sideways. So I've said previously it's kind of in this zone that I wanted for months and months, but really hasn't done much from there so far. I haven't actually looked at news, to be honest. I'm behind on everything and I haven't really updated much FX, but still has a little gap left above, but still under this 4-hour supply and thinking about what it's doing. So that's been quite dull this week so far. Gold's still consolidating and going up. I've got an alert here at 3,300 on that because there's kind of a lot of fib confluence there, so I thought it was worth watching just what happens when it hits there, and particularly because that also might hit at the same time that silver hits the weekly zone. Silver could go higher in the weekly, but there is that. On the indices, again, really just sideways this week. So, you know, I said last week that only NASDAQ and the Aussie 200 had gone to my short zones that I wanted, so I kind of did want a bit higher, but then obviously we got a drop beforehand. And we've retraced some of that drop, but again, no higher high from we haven't taken out last week's high yet, nor have we taken out the weekly low yet. Last week's low, or even the end of last week's low into these daily demands down here. So again, I'm just indecisive on that really. So we had a little pump in New York today, but it's just been retraced the whole way, and it's basically taken Bitcoin with it. So Bitcoin, a few things on this. So obviously it's still creeping up. It's hit my zone of interest actually on Sunday. So I got a nice reaction off that, and now it's come back up into it. I did reset that alert. I'll show that in a minute. I did reset that alert because there were some liquidations at 86,700 that I thought could get targeted. And then also the career pair. So the career pair I wanted, had also not hit this 8-hour zone yet, and in fact still hasn't quite. And there were these equal highs here, so I thought the career pair could go a bit higher. And then also the US dollar dominance pair, while it's made a 5-day demand and it's still holding it, again, thought this could potentially drop deeper in this 8-hour zone that it's holding. But again, just a bit of sideways. We've got made a new 8-hour supply and 12-hour, and Bitcoin made a new 8-hour, 12-hour week demand. So we'll see. So it's not great, this drop here, but at the moment it's still holding support. So I guess we'll see. But it was a fairly aggressive drop. And yeah, because I'm not really across what the data's doing, I don't want to say too much on that. But so you can see here on the low time frame chart, I've forgotten to put my mouse cursor on again so you can see where my mouse is more easily. So you can see here this is a 4-hour demand, and it's also a 12-hour demand that it's just hitting now. And it's got an 8-hour a little bit lower. So, at the moment there's no higher time frame breakdown on this, but obviously it's consolidating. It's taken out Sunday, the weekend's high, and yesterday's high, and if this closes a swing failure, then we might see a bigger drop. So be a bit careful on that. So you can see I set the second alert there. It was for the 113 fib, had confluence there. And then also the 2-hour inside 1-hour supply, but it's come off, very slightly below that. So if it does come back up, again, you're looking for, I won't show the liquidations now, or maybe I can. Let's see if it loads. Okay, so the liquidations you can see here, like 86,800 now. It's actually moved up a bit, depends which time frame you choose, and I'm now on the weekly. But yeah, there were some liquidations. It's taken some of them, but not all. So there's a few more. It could do another push. So just see, particularly because it's got the 12-hour demand, so just see what the reaction is. So if it runs through this 12-hour demand, then you're looking for a short if it flips it to supply. So it's fairly basic there. what else to say on this? As far as longs go, yeah, again, I haven't had a chance to add anything back in. I mean, maybe you'll get a bounce here on 79,600. Again, I haven't looked at the liquidations below, so I'm not sure. At the moment, my alert is still for that 8 hour that wasn't tested at 77,600 previously. So that's it on Bitcoin. And again, typically you're just looking for that confluence with US dollar dominance and all the other pairs just to get the precision on entries. But yeah, overarchingly, I should just to recap, my bias remains down unless we break this weekly supply. And on more than a swing failure. So the other entry above potentially would be swing failing and taking out these equal highs here. But CME already did that, so I was slightly more skeptical of that happening. I would still ideally like to see the price below 72k with the better confluence. I think was around 66. And that's on the higher time frame. But if we break the supply and flip it to demand, then I'll reconsider. We have flipped, obviously we flipped a couple of dailies. We did also flip a 3-day, and the price did bounce off there on Sunday. And what I was also looking for, let's just show you the 5-day quickly, is, and we've now got 9 hours until the 5-day closes, as to whether we create a 5-day demand here. Because if we do, then I might be more confident of taking longs. But obviously it's still a bit of a choppy, messy area, and much like where we were when we had the consolidations down here. Zones are pretty reliable. For the most part, I found these all quite reliable. They're at least reliable at the extremes, whereas this is reliable even in the sort of lower time frame ranges so far. But obviously we are kind of due for some sort of a retracement, at least across the alt market. So still keeping an eye out for that, that maybe we're going to get a move up to 96k, and where this weekly untested zone is inside the monthly. But I don't know, we're still finding resistance underneath the bottom of that upper range, so a little bit hard to judge. But yeah, just the trading the low time frames is still the way to go for me. Just let me have a quick look at the other dominance market cap pairs. Because I haven't looked at so excuse me for being a little behind because I haven't looked at these. So remember, you may recall if you watched my last stream that I was kind of happy with where total was. It was a decent total itself, was at a weekly demand inside the bigger, I think, 3-month and the monthly, so that was kind of a nice bounce point. But again, you can see still up tapping it against this weekly supply, the same as Bitcoin is. Obviously this very closely mirrors Bitcoin, but again, looking for that, are we going to flip that 5-day level on close today? And then obviously it's daily demand bounced off it, and it's sort of struggling a little bit here in consolidation. So for me, it could still go either way. It'd be very nice if it gave another drop to get Bitcoin into the zone I want it. But whether it goes up from here first, I'm uncertain at this point. But for me, this is still very much a downtrend, and it's just retesting and potentially a lower low. But being conscious it's coming off that major zone. All the other ones I kind of, they were again still in demands, but I kind of wanted lower. Again, like they were the only. And again, it's challenging because Total 2 is still in this monthly zone. I think it wick through the monthly zone, but it's still in the overarching 2 months, so it can bounce at any time if it wants to. It had already tested weekly supply up here, but obviously again Ether is remaining for now weaker. So this is just rejecting the most immediate 2-day supply. So this could still get another push on this, and then maybe some of the alt market will get a bit more excitement. But again, it's still kind of squidging up against that trend line, but no actual break yet. But yeah, something to keep an eye on. But we, like in a perfect world, I think now, I really want to break this zone and come down into lower areas. But, for ages, we've wanted to get the bigger bounce off this 2-month. But Ether's obviously run through this now. So this is only stronger because some of the alts are stronger, particularly the majors. But Ether itself has now broken down this zone. It's a weak demand, which I've said many times. So, but yeah, we'll wait and see a little bit more. Total 3, again, I wanted a bit lower on that. So this, again, holds more wait for my, okay, we're going to get a rejection and a second drop, or that would be what I'm looking for. Yes, it's in the larger 3 months, so maybe it's front run this area, you know, picking up some support from over here or something. But again, like perfect world, I would like this a bit lower for confluence across the whole market. And again, like with where all these are, I don't really want to be looking for longs. Others exactly the same. Others I wanted a lot lower, but obviously that, I mean, that really is going to crucify alts. Or more to the point, it has to crucify the majors. I think the only reason that these are holding up better is because the majors are holding up, and the bigger alts. Like most of the smaller alts obviously are much lower. But again, you know, this could pick up some more on the weekly here, but, you know, is it in an area, it's over in a macro area that I'm interested in, but so far, again, not getting any bounce to break supply. So we really need to see an impulse that breaks supply and then look for retests, and then maybe we'll get a move up to here. But at the moment, this is, you know, probably the closest we got to an impulse last Wednesday, but really not much since then. And again, still rejecting this new weekly supply here. I don't know if it already tested it. No, I don't think so. Or it tested it last week. And yeah, and daily supply, and is now looks like it's breaking this immediate daily demand. But and this also mirrors alts quite well. So keep an eye on alts for these structures as well. They've all got, or a lot of them have this daily demand and then another not quite tested daily demand below. So I've been a bit in two minds as to whether put alerts more aggressively on the upper one or on the lower one. I'll go through some of those in a minute. We'll, yeah, obviously you can see from this is looking like it's not very happy with bouncing off the first one, but if the second one can pick up, so that's really where you're looking for support, then we might get that push, even if it's only up into here, but if not, up through this weekly supply finally. And I think total DeFi is basically the same. Yeah, so total DeFi in fact weaker, and this was one of the ones again I thought was weaker, so that's actually come through that immediate immediate demand there. But again, this in the bigger picture, you know, having gone so deep in here, yes, again, you know, there is some support over here that I haven't got drawn in that this wick has picked up. But it's kind of choppy and messy. But again, like at this point, I kind of want total DeFi down here or even down in the 3 month below before I'll be more confident of it. You know, I guess in the favour of all of these is they are slow grinds. So if and when they do actually start like consolidating for a reversal like this, then we might get a decent move up through all these supplies. And you see that a lot on alts. Like they have this chop on the way down similarly. The difficulty with a lot of alts is that many of them also made like 1 month, 2 month, 3 month supply through here. So it's hard to know if those major levels are going to pick up as resistance. In fact, I think some of the ones that I've had hit already are. And in fact picking up just off the level, which is nice, because with the big zones, as you can see here, it's hard to know, you know, if this is a big 2 month zone. This first wick's gone quite down, you know, it has gone down into a demand inside it, but sometimes you can get the bounce off the top, other times it can pick up, you know, lower demand. So anyway, yeah, so basically, yeah, the TLDR version of this is, you know, mild possibility that we pick up these lower daily demands on alts. But again, still in the local downtrend, still coming off weekly supply, still expecting lower, unless I start to see an uptrend form. Ether, obviously still very weak. So I had one of my group yesterday said, oh, you know, maybe this would break out yesterday. You know, and I think it was, you know, it was when it was kind of closed at quite a nice 12-hour candle yesterday, I think, yeah. So it closed this nice 12-hour candle. Did make a 12-hour demand, but didn't manage to convert it to daily as yet anyway. So again, we're looking for a close above this 1645 line to get a new daily demand in there. But I did say in the group, you know, just be a little bit careful, because there was a situation, actually it's not going to help, but over here is where I'm looking at. Let me show you on CME. Because Ether isn't necessarily as reliable on closing CME gaps. So you know, you have the hope that Ether might get up here and close the gap, but you can see, you know, there's gaps up here, it didn't close. There's a massive gap up there, it didn't close. So, you know, it certainly doesn't have to close. And the problem you can have is that the gap can act as resistance. So here, you know, it made a gap when it opened, fell down, and then it acts as a resistance, swing failed it, didn't make a lower low, picked up higher demand, But again, third swing failure before the bigger drop, which then eventually, or I think maybe just took out that low or gave a double bottom there. So I just said, you know, on this week, sort of similar pattern, just be a little bit wary that it's not going to do that triple stop hunt and then end up coming back down here. Ether, obviously, as we know, is in now, it broke 3 months demand, but it's now hit the lower 2 months demand. It's taken out a couple of monthly lows over here, so a decent point for reversal if it's going to give one. But still a very weak bounce and still very much in a downtrend, like all the market cap charts I've just discussed. So what I have put in just to add, so there's nothing new on this, it was like looking at, so I had a slightly conservative short entries on this based on, you know, the supply being starting a bit lower than this because it made a little triangle of stops from last weekend or the weekend before now. But obviously it's got nowhere near that, and I haven't updated anything on that since then. On the downside, my next alert was always at the 3 month level at 1330. But so far, and again, I haven't double checked this, so I need to see if this doesn't change. But I just put this circle in to denote, excuse me, where all the walls were. So there was a very heavy stack of walls at 1080 to 1180, I believe. So I had to check, but I put that in there just to remind myself. So there's a 3 month zone, and then there's weekly, 2 weekly, and then these couple of CME gaps that haven't been filled for, you know, a couple of years down here for what they're worth. But again, like potentially if we're going to fall into here, then we might find, you know, maybe we're going to take out that low. But I would at least probably expect to bounce off these walls, or that to hold up price at least for some period of time, assuming they don't get pulled out. So if you don't have access to it, either ask me or ask somebody else who has access to Trading Light and can see where the walls are should we move lower. The BTC pair is, what else I've got on that chart? That other axis. Oh, okay, I'll just put the US dollar pair on there as well, apparently. But it's a weird axis, so I'm not sure what's going on. Anyway, BTC pair again, still retaining the downtrend. It's now, you know, back in this 2 month zone from the start of the up move in, when's that, 2020 or 2019. But again, as I've talked about before, you know, this is not, so yes, we could get a bounce here, and typically we do get bounces here. So far there's no sign of it, but this is, you know, regardless of whether we're expected to get a bounce or not, in the same bigger structure that I've talked about many times on the US dollar pair, this is weak demand. You know, we've had an impulse going up, it's come back, it's come back to some demand here, it's made another up move, but this move has been unable to break the sellers. So those sellers are stronger than these buyers. So while when we come back here, it's possible we make a triangle and then end up, you know, ultimately breaking out. But you know, and it's certainly possible we get a bounce, but it should be noted this is weak demand and these sellers are stronger than these buyers as it stands. So thus, you know, like I say, we may get a bounce in this zone. You know, it's a nice clean zone, but so far again, no sign of it. And regardless, you still have to wait for some sort of confirmation. So what's happened on this on the lower time frames is, again, it's just had a bounce off this monthly or 6 monthly level, just above the 6 monthly maybe, inside the larger 2 month. It's had a bounce, it's got a 3 day supply up here, and it's got a daily, may make a 2 day today or tomorrow, and it's got a daily supply. So again, at the moment, yes, we've had a bounce, we've got a higher low, this is weak supply, but again, it is still rejecting it. So and the difficulty with Ether is always that, you know, when it does start to move, it can really move fast. Not always. I mean, here at least gave some daily demands to get on, but occasionally you can get these sort of big, just random pumps. So it's up to you if you want to preempt that or watch out for it. For me, you know, this has just been going down far too long, and I think there's better trades than trying to long this in the hope that we might get a bounce here, or, you know, moving all your Bitcoin to Ether in the hope that Ether is going to outperform Bitcoin. It's possible, like I do think it's possible, like the higher time frame on the US dollar pair, you know, it's long overdue a bounce, but at the moment we aren't seeing that strength coming in, and you know, I'm not seeing ETFs buying this or anything like that, you know, which was the support that Bitcoin had previously. So that's that. What are we up to? 20 minutes on all of that. That's pretty good. On the majors, I did add in some new short entries because I just got bored, I think, and some have hit, some have not, but I thought it was worth doing. So EOS, my alert did go for this zone here, and it bounced very slightly above, went back up into supply and just came back down again. Like, I didn't add anything to that. The next zone of interest was obviously a bit lower. Litecoin, I added an alert for 2-day, 3-day supply up here, which has just missed. So again, like, are we going to get another push that'll take us into that? Perhaps. Ripple, just because I thought this, could be the start of a bigger breakdown. It's difficult because, we do have a swing fail of this low, but still I would at least like to go down into that demand, even though my one below is the one I have alerted. Anyway, this had a 5-day supply here and the weekly, so I thought it was worth an alert just to see, and it's taken a wick through the zone, but again, like Bitcoin, so we want to see if this is going to create a 5-day demand today. Anyway, yeah, it's obviously consolidating in this area, but that was the previous entry I had. So, but yeah, I just wanted to preempt it in case this is gonna just sort of start breaking down and then die from here. This is, again, it's the retest of the broken range. So, but then also similarly, in case it's an up move, I put a 12-hour demand. So I'm you can see I'm indecisive on these, and the reason is because of those market cap charts that, while I would prefer them lower, obviously they don't have to go lower, and they could get a bounce in between. And once you do start making demand like this and holding it, at least, maybe at least this is going to get a scalp, or we're going to get some sideways before we get some bigger move either up or down. So I do want to watch some of these zones. So I think I put the lower entry for long on Ripple, and on EOS was there already, which obviously EOS is weaker in the grand scheme of things. BCH was, I think, again, if you've watched my last streams, you'll know this is one of the ones I was most bullish on because of coming off the monthly demand at the lows inside 6-month demand. But then also my indecision was bearish because we have this 3-month supply. So I had the alert set for 3 months to see the reaction. I did say we might take these trend line stops. This is the Coinbase chart, and this is actually wick significantly higher. So Binance, I think the last I looked, or the first rejection was around where this red cross is. I'm not sure what the second wick took. So I then did reset this alert for 8-hour up here, and it went again when this wick went through, but I think on Binance it didn't get quite up that high either. So it's just kind of in this area. On the other exchanges I haven't checked all the purposes to know whether those entries would have been viable or not. And I was considering an alert to short this 8-hour supply in here today. But again, just still really indecisive. This has now made this 2-week demand as well. So this did close just about with a 2-week demand. So it is stronger, but it's not a strong 2-week demand. So it's not one I'd like to long. As you can see over here, this is a sort of similar situation. This green candle closed strong, and in fact a stronger demand than this one. But when it came back to test it, it might have given a bounce, but then eventually it fell through it. So because of the 3-month supply here, I'm concerned about being long, and because of the 6-month demand, I'm kind of concerned about being short. So it's challenging structures, but again on this, I think it's worth, in case we get that bigger play out of the monthly demand at the low, we can still go a lot higher in the 3-month supply and have it, still be valid as a supply. I just need to reset alerts for up there. Excuse me, I'll do that later. But anyway, yeah, similar to a lot of the other alts, it's got daily demand down here, another daily untested below. This wick having just tested a 12-hour just above. So again, I'll just see what the reaction is on here, and then if that fails, see whether you get a reaction here on BCH. Okay, then try and be a bit quicker on these. So BNB, I didn't add anything on. Just of note on BNB that while I have been bullish on this because it's been on yearly demand, and then I think there's a 2-month there as well, I have been bullish. I looked at the BTC pair, and the BTC pair has made and rejected a 3-month supply. So that made me a lot more wary on the US dollar pair. Because, even if this has made, the yearly demand and it's coming off here, it's still very possible for this to go all the way down in here and again still retain the yearly demand. And the other risks on this, you know, there's that this has, you know, just stop hunted the high and then stop hunted the stop hunt of the high. So, you know, there is a very real possibility this is going back to this demand and all, you know, eventually goes and breaks that low. And I know nobody likes to hear that, but, you know, and it's a yearly demand, so I don't really, again, I'm not really overly comfortable shorting it unless I see a good clean breakdown and then a retest for a short entry. This is still very messy in here. I still have my alert for 3 week supply up there, but it did make me a lot more wary of longs on this actually, unless again I see clear zones or a clear break. Link, I did add a short entry, but it just missed me. There was a new 2 week supply up here that hadn't quite been tested, and obviously the wick there has come to it's just rejected the 2 day just underneath. And again, I set a long entry for that daily demand on there because again, with Link, it's in 1 month, 6 month demand. Dogecoin, I haven't set a new alert, but again, as you know, I want to be bullish on this. This is the difficulty here. So I didn't set a short because the weekly had already been tested, and then it's got this 5 day, and I haven't set a long because the dailies have already been tested as well. So there is a little 8 hour down there, so if you want, you can look for longs in that, but I maybe want to see this possibly make a new low. You know, even if it just goes into this weekly demand, I wonder whether I should alert a little bit higher than that. I might move this alert up to the weekly. So again, like Dogecoin, I want to be bullish. It is in an annual demand. It's hit a 2 month inside an annual demand. But again, it needs to break some supply, needs to hold some demand. And you know, so sorry, I should say, you know, it can retest this daily and still hold it. I just don't normally set alerts for a second test on something, and particularly not if I'm counter trend. If it's a major zone, so like I would potentially set an alert for a retest of the 2 month level down here, or in this case, you know, just for a slightly lower low. But yeah, until I see this break supply, I wouldn't really want to look for another entry on that daily demand. ADA. Yeah, I think previously I've told you I had the alert set for there on the 1 day supply inside the weekly. Again, this has made daily demands and has held them and is now currently testing this one, but still right under supply, and it's still just a bit tight, and I don't want to look for longs on that. If it comes down and takes out these 2 lows, then I'll reconsider, but this, I mean, this potentially has a big drop if it wants. So I'm not loving the look of that, but again, it's just, yeah, it's sideways, it's in a range, it's on 6 month demand, so this could, you know, like if the whole market decides to reverse, like some of these will just suddenly run. But until and if that happens, you know, we suddenly start getting some giant green candles like this, or, you know, on some alts, and then you like buy the ones that need to catch up. But for now, you know, we're still seeing local downtrends, we're still seeing rejections of immediate supplies, including on Bitcoin. And yeah, that's those, BNB, Link, Doge and ADA. And then finally we have .sol, Atom and Near. So Atom's the bane of my existence, as we know. Like, I want to hide my entries on this because this was just badly traded, other than a couple of them are nice. What I did remember, foolishly, is that the reason I had this short up here is because, sorry, DRB entry just hit, but anyway, it must have dropped some more. It's because this is 3 months supply. So, like, that's why I was aggressively looking for a short, despite being nervous of these stops and thinking it could go higher. So I remembered that finally anyway. And then I thought, well, what the hell, I'll set a more aggressive alert here on weekly supply, which you can see, obviously, the wick has come to just below the level and rejected. So that's really kind of annoying. I am just going to shut my window. Give me a moment. Sorry about that, I'm back. Somebody randomly like banging outside my window. Okay, so yeah, we've got a rejection here off the daily supply, and I did have an alert for that weekly there. So you can watch that, you know, if it does come back to the weekly, it's aggressive, and I've said that in the alert. because I was, yeah, like I said, I was wanting those stops up there. So, you know, again, if you want to be, yeah, I mean, if you don't want to trade within the range, this could still sort of try and be a head and shoulders and run up if it wants to. Certainly if Bitcoin allows it. So I might end up, you know, regretting even that entry, but I do think it's worth considering. You know, it is a big weekly zone, so bear in mind it could run, I think there was a 12-hour and 8-hour up the top, you know, it could run higher in this zone. But I wanted to have, like, again, the more aggressive, you know, this is coming off 3-month supply, it's made a weekly supply having hit the 3-month, so that for me is a short entry. But yeah, like I say, just be conscious, it could, you know, the zone is that big, so while it appears close, there's a 3-day inside it there as well. So yeah, just kind of look in this area to see if you get a short up to sort of 4.45 to, from 4.3 to 4.5. And then, you know, if it wants to go higher than that, then it might start flipping, you know, and, you know, maybe it won't even come back now, who knows. There's no long set on this 12-hour, you know, it does have a 12-hour, 8-hour demand here, but because the little trend line stops, so you can look around, you know, 3.6 for a possible retest. Else, I'm looking much lower. Solana, again, so I didn't update anything on the short side because this is also similar to BCH, has the 3-month supply up there, and obviously it's just consolidating. It's got weekly supply here, so it could just reject now. Again, still in that local downtrend and still like retesting this weekly supply. I did set an alert for the lower daily on this. Again, like this upper daily got an immediate test anyway, but again, you can look, so all of these, you know, you can look the first daily or the lower daily for long entries if you want to go long, if you think this is the end of the downtrend. So for this one, I was slightly more conservative, mainly because I had an immediate retest, but also because it's so close to weekly supply. Then finally, DOT and NEAR, and I did say to the group, you know, that if the market does hold, that these were the two to kind of watch, because at least these two, while I do not like these two at all, I've said before on because of the BTC pairs are horrendous, but at least these two did have space to the daily supplies. So, and then yesterday they looked like they might run, you know, I was kind of hoping they would create new daily demands, but obviously this didn't. Or at least DOT didn't, and no, NEAR didn't either, and have now flipped, you know, the 12-hour to supply. So again, I'm not, in fact, you know, even NEAR is still in a 12-hour supply, really. But yeah, I mean, like, again, if the market picks up, you can look at these maybe over and above the other majors, because at least they have some space to supply. So if you want to scalp from one of the lower levels up to there, maybe that's worth considering. But yeah, bear in mind with these that they are at the weaker end, and their BTC pairs were just horrible, so I wasn't overly confident of longs on those anyway. But I have now set short entries on both of those at the 2-day supply, but obviously they haven't got anywhere near. Yeah, so that's all the usual stuff. Then my alert. So I also said in the last stream I would look at SUI, and I said I'd look at ENA, SUI, and ONDO, and then the stream kind of broke, or TradingView broke at the end actually, so I couldn't load. I managed to do ENA, but I couldn't load SUI and ONDO. So I will have a look at those again now, and I was going to have a quick look at FARTCOIN. So FARTCOIN was also an update I did on the last stream. So I said just be a bit wary as we start approaching this 3-day supply up here. So my alert did go, but didn't quite tap the level. It's, you know, again, daily demand, but just be a bit conscious if you're in FARTCOIN. But that's just, yeah, again, not showing the signs of a breakdown yet, but certainly has slowed down to consolidate at this level. And then ENA, just as a quick reminder, because I think it is sort of following what I thought. And again, like I said, that while I was bullish on this previously, I then became more bearish because it's potentially flipped this. It had 3 months demand, and that's why I was longing in here, but then potentially now it's flipped it to 3 months supply. So it has rejected here on it didn't quite hit the zones that I wanted on that high. You know, maybe it'll get another bounce up to there, but yeah, this I'm more bearish on. As soon as I start streaming, I start coughing again. ONDO. So ONDO and SUI I am more bullish on. And again, until they, and if you know, assuming they're not going to break down these demands like ENA has ultimately, which is obviously possible, but that's, you know, at the moment we're still in the phase of this is long bias until we see this low break. So obviously, yeah, we've had an impulse retracement, and we're looking for that either aggressively this demand and less aggressively the demand that's holding up that low to hold for structure. So on this, you know, again, we have got at least a decent bounce off there, straight up into supply. It then came down and held the same demand. So then ideally, that would mean you would expect to take out that high. Now, I mean, it has like stalled around there, you know, it's still trying to make a lower high even in this lower time frame structure. But, you know, currently it's got a daily demand at current price. It's got a 3-day just below, which I think it already tested. And I might be, yeah, it's already tested that. Maybe I'm too conservative on the alert again, but it's challenging to know. I just don't feel we're in a market yet that's so bullish that I'm going to be like, right, I'm going to trade every immediate daily demand that's made, particularly if there's an untested one below. And I've seen some other alts, you know, even go through, if it's got a daily here, they're still making a higher low, but they're going through the lower daily as well. So, and it obviously depends on the alt, and that's a lot of what I'm looking at are the sort of MEXC shitcoins that aren't listed anywhere else. But yeah, so that would just make me slightly more wary. But I have set an alert there for a possible long on the daily. You know, this thing is on monthly demand inside 3-month demand, so I think it's worth watching. Then up here, I've set an alert for weekly supply. It's got a weekly and then a 2-weekly above. And I don't love the weekly, actually, the way the structure is on the lower time frames. But with these 2 wicks up into it, but we can see, you know, it is a clean zone when you actually just do the weekly. It could run higher into here, and we are seeing maybe a few of them do that. So particularly this sort of 2 weeks. So the initial alert is there, but then I meant to put that twice. But then so the initial alert is here on the weekly, but then there's a 2-weekly higher, and then it's also left equal highs up here. But what I'm looking for is, even if I am bullish on this, thinking this monthly is going to play out and just go to the moon, I'm still kind of going, okay, hopefully we're going to get something like this that we can actually trade, rather than this. But it is possible, and if that happens, you know, like, so here we had a weekly supply, and obviously it probably didn't got very little rejection, or at least down to here at the absolute lowest off there. But you're looking, and again, it depends how much demand's been made in between. So obviously here had a long consolidation. So if this just runs straight up from here without consolidation, then it's more likely we're going to get a better reaction. If this, you know, stays here for another 3 months before going up, then it's more likely to go straight through that zone. But again, the alert's just set, and we'll see what happens, you know, with assessing zones as and when they're hit. Like, we're really hoping this holds in this area, because there's, again, potentially a very big drop to be had if this does decide to break down. But really your last point of demand is this weekly, so it can go lower in this area if it wants, take out some of these lows even, but we don't want it going below this previous entry basically. So that's ONDO, and then SUI. So SUI is sort of similar, well actually is like better, probably a little bit better scenario than ONDO. So it's got a 3-month demand here, so it's just tapped into the top of the 3-month, and then it's got a 2-month just below. It's got some wicks down here. That's the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous for this, that it could come and take out these wicks, particularly also if there's a daily there that hasn't quite been tested. Failing that, it does have an annual level here, and then obviously it can potentially get a bigger drop to there if it wants to retrace more. So really, when you're looking at these, it's just a question of how aggressive you think. You know, this wave you can see retrace all the way to the start, so it is possible this can retrace all the way back down here and still be bullish. But let's just have a quick look at the fibs. Obviously, I'm looking at this on the log scale as well, so it looks kind of better than what has happened in a way I'll show you in a moment. Yeah, so the 61 fib on the log scale would be down here in the 70s, so that would be, you know, in the entry you would prefer on the high time frame in the golden fib zone. So it's still kind of entering quite aggressively. However, on the linear scale, you know, it tried to bounce between the 61 and 70, and it's now in this sort of 61-70 area. So again, we could see that bounce from a linear scale perspective. Obviously, you can see the picture looks very different than when you look at the log scale. I'll take that high out, that's not useful. But anyway, let me go back to the log scale. So nice bounce off this 3-month level in there. I might also just hide that weekly just so you can see. But yeah, nice bounce off this monthly level in here and a 5-day inside it. Slightly conscious of the potential stop hunt that could happen underneath there, so you can keep an eye out for that if it does drop further. But again, it's still retaining that local downtrend, so there's nothing here that makes me think, okay, yeah, you know, long this to the moon while it's still on a lower high. So again, while the daily's starting to look slightly more interesting, we're now drifting down inside that upper daily. Again, the same structure as I've shown on everything else. I've alerted the lower daily, so you can keep an eye on that. But again, don't forget, like all of these, downtrend, still potential for taking out that low. And you're still, and this trade, if it is along there, is still a hope trade and is still not the higher probability trade. What it has in its favor is the low being in 3-month demand. But if the low, if that really is a very strong low and it's in, you know, and it's really going to want to move up from here, what you really want to see is it go through weekly supply. Once it goes through weekly, if it then flips that back to demand, then you're more confident. So an entry like this, while it's possible, is still a risky entry. But again, at a minimum, you know, even if, like, for example, we're in this type of structure, comes down to that lower daily and at least gives you a move up to the supply again. So, you know, even if, like, so ideally, you know, there is a less chance that we're going to run straight through here. You know, it does have a decent move away from it. So at least hope, at a minimum, hopefully you'll get a move up enough to move your stop to break even and then just see what happens. And then, as I say, if that then next move then gets us through supply, then you can start looking to add to the trade in the bigger picture. But for now, yeah, so now the immediate entry is like check that daily and then potentially look for a stop hunt into the daily, the until not quite tested daily down here. So I am looking at the Bybit chart, so I don't know, maybe on other exchanges this daily has been tested. But again, you can look for a stop hunt of that low there if it does want to come back lower. But again, this is a reasonable place to look for a long, low probability for now. Yeah, so that's what I said I would cover from previously. I don't think I've had any other requests lately. So yeah, I was just going to go through. So I went through a bunch of alerts from last week, and then I made a new section on my watch list, section 3, which is all the alerts that I've had since, I don't know exactly when since, but probably since Thursday or Friday. And as I've said, you know, I'm now more inclined to trade both directions. I'm less short biased than I was, although if I still see pumps, I still think it's worth, if I see pumps, I still think it's worth looking for shorts. Hi Mahmood, I did the BTC at the beginning, so if you, I assume you can scroll back in the stream. If you scroll right back to the beginning of the stream, then you should be able to see that, else you might have to wait till I finish and then watch the replay later. But yeah, for the first 5 to 10 minutes is Bitcoin. Oh, sorry, no, actually, I think I did TradFi first, and then it's just after that is Bitcoin. Yeah, the market in general, and then I moved on to alts from there. Yeah, so A8, long at the lows, short up in 3-day supply here, re-long on the daily has worked quite well. So I think obviously this alert I think went yesterday or the day before, so that's probably a bit late for an entry there. Next short up there if it goes there. So again, you know, these were the ones I was kind of hopeful of, the ones that had left all these trendline stops, that they would start doing this. And I do have some shorts in, but it just depends. Let me have a look at so this had no weekly supply, and then had a 3-day, so it went through the immediate 3-day supply. It is coming off 3-month demand, so again, I was more bullish on this. So again, yeah, it's looking at, like as I just said, for some of those other alts, it's looking for the higher lows. So, you know, we came down into this 3-month demand here, obviously had a massive pump up, and went through all very high in weekly supply up there at that short entry, then came all the way back down to ground zero for a re-entry, and has now bounced again. But, you know, and then the bigger picture, are we in a state of the market? You know, I think now we need to see a bit of consolidation through here. You know, this is basically just a stop hunt candle. So we need to see if we're going to get some true demand and, you know, are these zones going to hold? But yeah, if you got in that long entry there, then well done. And then beyond that, we'll just see what happens from here. I just need a bit more consolidation, else potentially there's a long entry lower. AL is something also similar that I've talked about on my previous stream. I was hoping that we'd get, I think I talked about it kind of around here, I was hoping we would get a bounce, a breakout sooner. I did say at the time that, you know, I was waiting for, at that point, you know, for the, I think it was on this candle actually, that if this created a daily demand by closing above there, if that had closed green, then I'd be looking for longs. And then also I think there might have been a 12-hour or 8-hour, yeah. So similarly, there was like a 12-hour structure. If the one of these two candles, wherever I was looking at it, had closed green here, again creating a 12-hour demand, I would have been inclined to look for longs on that. However, it didn't. It ended up retracing back down to this 2-hour zone. But yeah, I mean, do keep an eye on this because, again, like we just saw on A8, you know, if this does manage to get some action, it's got a lot of trend line stops there that it could run through. It is only listed on MICHI. I just wanted to check that quickly. But yeah, and also obviously no supply for a long way up there. So if it does get past this area, then potentially it has good potential. ALCH, another one I've talked about previously. I'm just going to light a cigarette quickly. So I was looking for longs actually down here. I think it might have got a bit lower than I wanted based on there's one chart with more history. I haven't got it on my list, so I won't go and search for it now. But yeah, this obviously was one of was and still is one of the stronger charts on here. So I had an original short there, which gave a reaction into a long. Then I had no more aggressive long here, and I think I did comment, you know, that it wasn't necessarily again high probability because it hasn't broken this high, hadn't broken the previous highs. So unfortunately, it was bad timing on that, and it did come back deeper, but overarchingly is still holding this whole 2-week demand zone. It's now got a new weekly demand in there, so I have put another alert there, but I have put a comment, just be conscious again that it might stop hunt if it does come back down. So obviously it's got stops through that zone. So what you can find, you know, if this rejects, because obviously it's still going, is that, you know, you get that bounce and then it goes to take out, so at least you might get a scalp off here. But yeah, I wouldn't, the point is that mainly I wouldn't limit there just in case it doesn't do that and just in case it wants to come and take those stops out immediately. Then I had an alert here, I think, for a 5-day supply. Yeah, so it's 5-day supply, and obviously it's still pushing and not giving any reaction as yet. Obviously this is one of the stronger coins. You can, if you want, you know, like I say, my alert is like slightly more conservative because I'm stuck with the weekly on this, but you know, there is 3-day and daily demand up here, so if you want to try and get in higher, and even a 12-hour or 8-hour closer to price, if you want to try and scalp this and getting in high, you know, even it's held this a new 8-hour up here since I last charted it. For me, I just don't trade in supply, or I'm very, very bad at breakout trading. Like I always seem to kind of go, oh, let's long here, and then maybe it'll give a move like it has today, like maybe it would come bounce in here and then go to there, and then I would just end up, like, for some reason, when every time I try and do it, it never works. So I don't know if there's some better thing to look at. I would be more inclined to do in a bull market as well. Again, this obviously is still pushing, but we are still in a bear market. And everything else is going down. So now I've set an alert for possible swing fail of that high if it gets up there, but you know, at the moment I'm still like sort of looking for shorts in this general area, and longs if it gets back there, being conscious of that trend line. APT, I do have quite a lot on this list, so I need to go a little bit faster probably. So APT, another example of, you know, the trading both directions. This has, you know, 3-month supply up here and various weeklies underneath, so I had an alert for weekly supply in here. Mainly I'm trying to do them where I'm less confident of demand, and this was a bit of a hit and miss because it is, you know, a daily demand at the start of, you know, the previous impulse, but I feel like this is just kind of going off the boil a bit. It's a little bit like Ripple, you know, again, now we've broken down this orange line, you know, it has closed down now rather than closing on a wick like the previous 4 times. So again, I think it's worth looking for potentially a deeper move. And as I say, you know, like any of these and all of these, like, you know, once you're in, you can move your stop to break even, you know, it's got a daily demand below. So, you know, maybe this is going to bounce here and just, you know, suddenly go, excuse me, wrong tool. Maybe this is going to bounce here and suddenly go back up again. Obviously I did have a long off the low as well. But some of these aggressive entries can work quite nicely. So, So always worth considering, you know, and it's always probabilities, you know, maybe this rejects here, comes back down and then goes higher in the weekly zone, still retains this weekly, so essentially this cross is an alert is still valid, but it could go, you know, all the way up to the top of this daily before dropping. Alternatively, you know, maybe the market or this coin is still bearish and this is just going to drop from here. So you've got to, it's just balancing the probabilities with the risks and the rewards. ARCA is an interesting one. So ARCA had an alert on the 3-month and then the 2-day inside the 3 months. So it's obviously come up quite high into the 2-day. This is an interesting one. Like maybe this will keep going from here. So I actually probably do want to look for longs on this now. I think I was waiting to see if the weekly confirmed. It's come off 2-month demand at the lows. Obviously is in this giant triangle. At the moment, you know, I sort of, as soon as an alert goes, I reset for the next zone. So I've got another alert there for a short, but like I say, if it starts getting up there, I would think maybe this is going to pull an AERGO or something. I haven't got an AERGO on my list. Actually, I should have it on my list. There must be some somewhere previously, but that just keeps going. Anyway, another similar scenario here. We've got weekly demand down here and daily demand in between. Again, the problem we have is, well, like I like the look of it on the higher time frame, on the that giant triangle, I really don't like the look of it on the 3-month. So I don't want to be trading longs into when we're going up into a 3-month zone like this. It's a weak 3-month zone because it hasn't, this red candle hasn't closed below that candle. But in an overarchingly bearish market, I don't want to be looking for longs right in 3-month supply. So I think that's why I was wary, and also again just seeing what the market's going to do as a whole. So, you know, if you want to be bullish on this, feel free. You can look for longs on that daily there, or on the weekly if it comes down inside, so somewhere in this area. But just be conscious we're coming off 3-month supply. If we start breaking this trend line, and you know the whole market gets more bullish, then I might be more inclined to think, okay, a 3-month supply could break, or we could at least go right to the top of it. But yeah, as it stands, I don't think I really want to be looking for longs on this. Baby is one of the new coins. I only charted it because somebody asked me about longing on it at the weekend. So I don't know whether, I'm never quite sure if this PA is valid from so 31st of March. So there's like kind of a 10-day gap, but I'm not sure if this is a different baby or the same baby on MEXC. However, I've seen some of these levels work later, so I tend to leave them on the chart just to see. So I did have a long entry go on this today for this 12-hour demand here. There's an 8-hour inside it lower. So these obviously are very high risk zones. So I've reset the alert for down lower. So that's the 12-hour there, and then the 8-hour down here. So you can watch this. You know, this I think is listed on all the exchanges. Yeah, all the futures exchanges pretty much, including Binance. So, you know, and you know, it's very early, and these can very much go either way. This could just die from here, or it could go, you know, it could go up, it could reject and die, or it could just go to the moon. You know, we don't have any history to really know, other than the possibility of this. Oh, actually, yeah, the only other consideration, which you only see on the high time frame, so I didn't show all of the history of baby from MEXC. So if this is the same baby, you know, it is at 6-month supply up here. And, you know, obviously, if there are people who bought this spot that are trapped up here, these people are getting out at break even. So this can potentially just collapse from here, assuming this history is valid. However, you know, you never know if you're going to get a bounce in between or whatever. So, you know, I put a high risk long entry or long alert on this. And then similarly, I've got a short alert there on the 8-hour. I think I also commented, so there are two, just as is now low time frame, there's a 2-hour, 1 hour inside it that hasn't been tested up here. Or not inside it, there's 2 8-hour supplies stacked for a start. The upper one has an untested hourly, and then this one has an untested hourly. So the aggressive entry would be at, you know, just at the open of this 8-hour, but be conscious when you have 2 stacked on top of each other, it can run inside. And also, you know, when it's so new, this isn't, you know, really necessarily, it's not high time frame supply, it's not balanced with anything over here, except if we take into consideration the 6-month zone up there. So, oh, I swear that crossed there before, and I just put another one on top of it. Not sure. Anyway, yeah, so potentially look at shorts if it comes back up here, and you can potentially look further at high risk longs now. and another kind of messy chart, but it was just, again, hoping for the best. I haven't got all the others saved here. I think if you look at the BitGet chart, this is a yearly level. But again, the MACD chart just doesn't show that. But you know, that gave a nice long off here, so I thought it was worth looking for a possible long re-entry on here. But obviously it's a fairly horrible chart. But I think I did also say, the main thing I was saying is that it has left all these stops up here. So if this does run from here, then I expect it to at least take out that orange line. So it was worth looking firstly for longs on the first bounce, and then secondly for longs on the re-entry bounce. And it's going to be a little bit dependent on what Bitcoin does now, because if Bitcoin, let me just quickly check that, if Bitcoin's going to fall, okay, Bitcoin for now is holding that 12 hours, so that's good at least for the alt market, and then we might get some sort of a bounce on this. At the moment it's slow going, and obviously it came down really quite hard here. Hopefully it hasn't been delisted or anything like that. So again, just check these. No, it's on everything. It's in fact on Binance as well, I didn't know that. No, I do have it on Binance. But yeah, okay, so at least it's on quite a few charts, quite a few exchanges, so it does have some volume against it, even though the chart makes it look like it doesn't. But yeah, I think that's worth keeping an eye on. You know, it's an easy invalidation if it gets below here, and certainly if it goes below there, just get out. But if it does start to move, you can keep an eye for the second. You know, is it going to, like at this point, it's like, is it making an uptrend? So it's had the bounce, it's gone up to some sort of supply, it's now retesting. So are we going to get an uptrend in here, which is then going to resolve in, okay, oh, that was dramatic, but in at least taking out that orange line. But that's worth watching. BGSC, another kind of like, yeah, very weird looking chart. Some of these, again, I've seen this quite commonly. This probably had a little bit too much consolidation before it got up there, but in many of these cases, when these are making a 12-hour supply, and it's got a big 12-hour supply up there and then one down here, and then rejecting it, when we get to the second run up, it can reject off an hourly inside. They're leaving, a lot of them are leaving this hourly or 2 hourly inside the upper 12-hour. So what you can find is that they take out the wicks of the 12-hour and then drop down. This, unfortunately, is consolidating longer than I would want it to here. And also I can see it's made a new 3-day demand here. I think I'm still, again, not quite at the point that I want to long this. It's also made a weekly now since I did this chart. So it's got a new weekly demand in there. So yeah, this has become a significantly lower probability long. It's got a 2-week in there as well. No, it hasn't got a 2-week, but it did close above this level. So I think, yeah, I would give this a little bit more time, but potentially see if it creates a new monthly demand or something. But, you know, new 3-day demand down there and a 2-day. And the all-time high, so it's got a lot of scope on those wicks if it wants. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one-to-one to watch, actually. I think I might throw an alert in there just to see. Probably not on the weekly, but on this 3-day. And I can see there's actually a 12-hour or something there. I'm going to throw an alert on this 12-hour just to see. Put there's other zones as well. 12-hour zone on 3-day, 2-day. Can't type. Also another 12-hour lower in the 3-day. Yeah, so I think that's worth it because it's made so many other higher time frame zones in there. I think it's kind of, they're not high probability zones because, again, this hasn't broken this wick yet. So while it's made a weekly demand in the consolidation, it's not necessarily strong demand. We don't know, but it's certainly worth watching, I think, for retests here and here if we do come back down again, you know, and or, you know, actually has made a 12-hour at current price. You know, if you want to be super aggressive, you can see if this breaks out from here. But again, for me, you know, where we are in this 2-hour, let me check, is it this 2-hour or 1-hour supply? Yeah, it is this 2-hour supply that had a, you know, very big drop away from it. So I mean, well, having said that, that could just be one person, but yeah, it's not somewhere I personally wouldn't want to long up here. I'll wait for it to retrace at least some, if not more, of that wave, but worth considering. BigTime was one of the ones, again, it was starting to look stronger earlier, so I did manage to get a couple of longs on this previously, or no, one long. So it's made a weekly demand and came off that, and we did get the alert. I think that wasn't the weekly when I set the alert. I think it was a 2-day down there, so it's a tighter entry, which was nice, or a daily. This, I believe this did get listed on Binance, and I think that was why it was sort of pumping the last few weeks when nothing else was. The problem is now, you know, again, it hasn't quite got past local supply. You know, it's potentially a swing fail of this all-time low on XC. But again, so I had the aggressive long entry there just to see. So that went yesterday. So yeah, like I say, we had that long entry on this daily demand down here. And then it did go up, and then we did get a bounce from yesterday that went up into 12-hour supply, and now it's back testing the same level again. So you can keep an eye on that. Again, for me, it's a second hit, so I'm more wary of it. There is now a 12-hour a little bit below, and that 3-day. So the 3-day was already tested locally. So I was, again, just being a little bit more conservative, because so far both these waves have retraced the full up move. So just conscious that this might retrace the full up move. You know, if you're in from here, great. You know, you can possibly look at 608 if you get a little bit of a move lower here. Else potentially at the bottom of this wave, and then now back in that weekly at that weekly level. And then a short entry I've set up on 3-month supply up there. BMT again was another one that's similar to what was the first one I looked at, A8, that I was wondering if we were going to get a pump through all these stops. So I had the short alert go in here, and then I was looking at it, and I did post it in the group, just saying, okay, you know, it's worth watching this daily demand for a possible long, because if it does work, then there's, you know, huge scope for this to go a lot higher. Unfortunately, it has gone through the daily, so it just wicked through it here and then did bounce, but again, it's come back down. But this is something I think, yeah, is worth keeping an eye on. Oh, actually, no, the only other issue I have with this now is, and the other problem I said is it could create 2-week supply. And obviously it has now done that. And it hasn't quite tested it, so these wicks up today. So I'm a little bit in two minds about this. So if we see it get past, you know, if you see it touch this level, be very careful, because if it just touches this, it could just drop. But if it does manage to push up into the 2 week, then obviously if that level itself doesn't cause a problem, and then this first daily supply, then we could get a much bigger run on this. But if you can get in a long, if it does make demand and hold a demand, and you can get in a long at the low and just see what happens, I think that's worth doing. But yeah, be wary of that 2 week supply in there. BNKR, so another one that's, again, still in the downtrend, but has had decent consolidation, decent move. I reset the alert there, or set the alert there for 1 day demand, and saying there's just an untested 4-hour if it wants to go deeper. It's still obviously in a local downturn trend, still rejecting supply. It doesn't have much history, at least. So, you know, it's obviously had a downtrend, had a down move, had a down move. So it is possible that, you know, the next bounce can take it up to there or up to here. And then, you know, so we're still looking for that downtrend. However, again, it might in between give us a rejection here and move up before. So again, worth looking for longs there, and or, you know, maybe it's going to reverse. So, you know, like I said, these are all very new, lacking history coins. So, you know, maybe this is the reversal, and we're now going to, you know, see pushing through this weekly supply. But because of that consolidation, that tight consolidation, I think it's worth looking for a long entry if it comes back into this area. And then, like I said, there's that 4-hour excuse me, 4-hour at the base of here if it wants to retrace more of this. But yeah, do be conscious again, it's coming off daily supply, so I had the alert for 2-day supply for a short there. So that's what I was saying about, you know, being able to trade both ways. I reset the alert a little bit higher because there's a 5-day, and then obviously this weekly as well. So yeah, we're just looking for the reactions as and when we hit the zones. The weekly's already been tested. Sorry, not 5-day, 3-day. Oh, there's a 3-day a little bit higher. But again, so yeah, so you can see we are still getting the initial reactions off the zones for the most part, but now it's less inclined to at least immediately go back for a lower low or get those sort of bigger aggressive down moves that we were having earlier this year. My stream quality. Okay, another one here. So broccoli 3B, broccolif 3B, or broccoli F3B. So again, yeah, and I think I talked about in this last stream as well. I thought this looked like it was going to take off, but obviously then it did without coming back to test my long entry. So yeah, I talked about previously on this about how it sort of had an accumulation manipulation thing going on. I was looking, oh, it wasn't this actually, that's just broccoli itself, which apparently I haven't got on my list. No, broccoli F3B is a little bit different. So, you know, I've set an alert here. It has made a new weekly demand a little bit above where that alert is now. It's kind of offset by a candle. So then 3-day demand or 3-day, 4-day inside it. So look for longs there if it does come back. Obviously at the moment it's still pushing. I think I had the initial alert. The initial alert was it was a 12-hour supply here that this alert had just missed. So I said look for a swing failure there, else wait for daily or weekly level above. So obviously it's come up into the weekly level there. So again, this is not something I want to long right now. It's up to you if you like longing supply. At the moment it's not showing a sign of a breakdown that I would want to add to a short. But yeah, so if it comes back down here, I'd look for longs again. But another one with a bit of a reversal. So, you know, I had the short entry that went in, I think, what was that, last week, which gave a reaction, but again, made a higher low and then has finally broken up. Similarly here, like again, like I'm okay with these, you know, that this is, it's still in a downtrend, aggressive short, you know, happens to reverse at that point and then aggressive short. The problem I have is, you know, what I'm looking at, you know, I can see this is a strong move up into there. Then I would like it to come back down to test to get back in for the long entry. Thanks for following, Nivesh. Yeah, so I'd like, you know, this to come back down to get into the long entry. I'm not sure why I have a line up there because that's not, that was over 12 hour. Yeah, so again, this is a decent move up, but now, you know, so I've missed any local, so potentially, you know, obviously there was a long entry here on the 8-hour demand. Why is that not doing what I want it to do? This needs to be a dotted line. It's a new 8-hour demand here. So I tend to, again, I want the bigger pullback ideally. You know, if you want to look for an aggressive long on this, feel free. It's not a particularly good supply. The only thing on the supply side, actually, having said that, is it's where I previously longed. So when I tend to look at is if I previously longed somewhere, it's because there was previous support which is broken. So that's why I was looking for longs here. It was broken, and now if we're back testing that same zone, we could see that rejection there. We are seeing that with these wicks, but on the, you know, on the plus side, it is still holding demand and it is still pushing a bit higher. So for now, this is still holding the uptrend. It would be nice to see this come back down here for a decent entry, but maybe it'll just push from here. Captain, an aggressive short, 2-week supply. I think this might have gone up into that too quickly, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just wicked up into that on MICHI, so that's probably an entry that people wouldn't have got. But again, you know, like while everybody's like aggressively longing, I'm still looking at the short side as well, because there are some of these, and certainly on MICHI, there are still some that just die forever. So, you know, I had some longs on this looking for the possibility of a higher low in previous, but now it's come down lower. It's made a new 2-week supply in there. You know, maybe this is going to fall. And it's similar to, so, and again, just that incentive to trade both directions. This is very similar to what I just said on BMT, excuse me. BMT was, remember, the same. It's made that new 2-week supply. So maybe I should just flip short on this. But again, because of the stops on this makes it more exciting to look at potentially on the long side, because if it does run, it could take out all those stops. CAPTAINBNB, on the other hand, and it still has got some stops, but you can see it's wicked quite a lot, so it's possibly taken. A lot of these stops already taken a bunch of that down move here. So, you know, this is what you're looking for to happen on BMT, which is CAPTAINBNB is already done. So it's more inclined to maybe this is just going to continue down from here. Or at least take out that low. But yeah, so I think, you know, now, like I say, that's an entry that probably would have been hard to get, but you're looking, again, is this going to close below? Is it going to give you a new, so 8 hours, but is this going to create a new 3-day supply in here? Then you can potentially look for adding on to shorts or getting short off the back of the rejection on that 2 week supply, you can maybe look for a short on this 3 day if this closes as a 3 day supply. DRB, God, this is looking like it wants to break down now. So that alert just went again. I don't know what that alert was. Maybe I moved something by mistake. DRB 2 day demand. Don't know what that was. I was in alert I had there by mistake. I should actually just delete that from my channel. So all my alerts go from TradingView straight into Telegram. So if you join my group, you get all these alerts as and when they hit that come through into Telegram. If you've trade FX now, you can go to my FX channel and get the FX alerts for free. But then my crypto group's paid, so then you get all these zones as they hit alerted. Some work, some don't. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but I think you get, at least it gives you things to look at. So DBR, oh, is that why I'm getting confused? I'm getting confused because there's a DBR and a DRB. So now I shouldn't have deleted that alert. I have to go back to my channel and undelete that alert. Can I restore? Don't actually know if I can restore. I'll just put it back in again. That deleted by mistake. Oh no, yeah, no, that is, sorry, damn these tickers. So anyway, DBR and DRB are different things. So this is DBR. So DBR anyway, yeah, this is again something with not very much history, so it's kind of hard to know. So obviously I had nice longs off here, but it's only a daily demand, shorts from a weekly supply. I don't know if that created a new 2 weekly supply. No, so it did close without creating 2 weekly supply. So this is, yeah, it's a pretty high risk long entry, but again, depending on whether the market's ready for it, it's come down fairly hard. But it's, yeah, so had the bounce on this 5 day demand here, and now is the retest on 12 hour, 8 hour demand. So you can see if this picks up a higher low here. Pretty high risk because it's less high risk than some of the newer coins, but it's not ideal because A, it hadn't hit this daily exactly at the low, and B, this daily doesn't even sit in anything to the left. But I might reset that daily in case actually it gets swing fail. So yeah, if this doesn't hold, then you can look for a swing fail of the previous 2 lows into this daily demand. And I think there weren't any clean short entries for me on this. So the thing I like on this again is we've had that big drop. So again, if this does pick up as support, you know, it's got very little supply up here before it gets up to 29.30. DEXE, another really sort of messy chart. This was a rogue wick on MICHI, and I think doesn't appear on the other exchanges. I was bullish on this. It does have annual demand and 2 month demand. So we had a short up here, you know, and then it did have an aggressive drop into that zone, retest, and now it's held the retest. So while, you know, it's fairly unpleasant PA on this, you know, it's now back up in daily supply, so don't be buying this right now, but be conscious with this, you know, it is on very high time frame demand down here, so this could run if it wants to, and hence why I haven't got any new shorts on it. It does have a 2 week supply up there, but I haven't put any new short entries in since that one because of the 2 month demand. DF, this is another one. So this again wicked down into 6 month level yesterday. It was a very quick wick, so I don't know if anybody again would have been able to take that. Probably not, unless they were seriously on the ball. Weekly 6 monthly demand, so again worth watching this for longs, but now you really want to be waiting because of that nasty wick. I wasn't sure if it was going to retrace more of it yesterday because this hit last night, but obviously hasn't retraced much. But you can, yeah, keep an eye on this for longs because this is coming off 6 month demand here. We do have an alert for I think that's a 3 week supply, but I hopefully put on there, yeah, 1 2 week supply, but coming from 6 month demand. Yeah, again, then another difficulty on the higher time frame, so it's coming from annual supply up here and into 6 month demand. So again, this could just triangle. It's battling annual supply annual sellers against 6-month buyers. So, but yeah, I don't know, you may not want to trade that because of that nasty wick, it's not ideal. DOGINME, something again I've been effectively trading both directions. So I talked about this before, that I had a trend line break, initial alert go there, then a short come on the retest, and then another short for the second retest, and then we got another short entry in there yesterday, as well as bit of a too aggressive long here. I talked about, I put that in, I didn't love it because of the fact there was no low time frame demand in there, but it was a monthly and a 2-week demand, so it was worth watching, but it didn't get much until it came back down into this daily zone. And again, there's another one because it's got monthly demand. I'm not sure why I have a second monthly, maybe it's got 2 monthly demands. Yeah, it's got 2 monthly demands stacked on top of each other, but because of that, I'm then still bullish on this. So I'm looking potentially for a higher low. But yeah, so I can still be bullish on this, and it could still go all the way down here and still be bullish, so be conscious of that. But again, if the market's ready for it, that's the higher low entry, and then potentially another short if it gets up to this 4 8-hour supply up there. FARTCOIN I already talked about at the start of the stream. Fluid, this is another one that threw in a wick that I think might not have been there. Actually, no, I think was there on the other exchanges. I think I just looked at BYBIT, but actually BYBIT doesn't have futures. Yeah, so MICHI obviously has that same wick. And I think this actually was slow enough possibly to have taken, or maybe not. Hard to judge. Anyway, that's maybe that was too fast to be taken. But again, so the bias on this, that's monthly supply, come down as weekly demand, but it is monthly supply. So my bias is down on this potentially to get down into here. But again, that's a trade that would have been hard to be taken. If you watch this and it kind of edges back up here and look for a rejection around like 4.8 on a retest potentially. Else it might just drop from here. The other option is obviously then if it drops through this demand, then you're looking for a retest on the hold on, let me have a look. You know, again, it's still in local demand, so it's definitely not a short now, but if it gets back below there, then you might look for a short on the retest of that level. Gas, another difficult chart and a little bit messy. So again, it's still massive annual demand that it's here, but obviously it's really deep down inside it. Had a 2-month demand there, it's come almost to the bottom. My concern with this is that it's left all these equal lows, and also that it has 3-month supply. So I had an alert set for, actually I think I didn't, I think I missed the short, but I would have had an alert set for 2-3 month supply. So this is 2-month supply and there's 3-month supply there, but I missed obviously having an alert set on that. However, I did think it was worth looking for the re-entry. But as I say, it's challenging because, you know, maybe that is the bottom on it. Again, I haven't looked at all the exchanges to know if all of the exchanges have this double bottom thing going on here. I've left my alert set for taking out those lows if it comes back down there. But again, trading both directions. So I said this was a bit of a risky long entry because it's consolidated so much in between and because it made this new daily supply. But again, like if the people had taken that for a scalp, it gave a pretty nice scalp. At least you've got the volatility when you look at these things, that maybe it's a high risk long, but at least it gives you the volatility. So it's a quick, reasonably quick move up. Now back up, so I had an alert go today for like daily, and I think there's 2-hour or 1-hour supply there. 1-hour supply. So obviously it had a reaction off it, but it's come back and tried to hold some support on this meme trend line I've got from previously. Not sure where that comes from. Yeah, so that's a trend line. So maybe it is picking back up the trend line as support. Who knows? I don't really use trend lines terribly, but again, like, so my bias on this again is a little bit mixed, but the more recent time frame is down. So 3-month supply, 2-month supply. So while we can go higher inside here, unless we break this, you know, that's obviously a downtrend. But yeah, I think it's perfectly reasonable to look for longs on this. I think it was just those triple bottom. I would, if this was anything else and a better demand, I would have put an alert here for an entry on daily demand, but just because it's left the triple bottom, I've gone for potentially a lower low. Done. This is, yeah, again, an example of just how the lower time frame, the charts which lack history can be a bit challenging. So this I was kind of like, okay, so I was short biased thinking it was going to break down, but then obviously this short came down but didn't break the low. So then, and then it made a daily demand. So I thought, okay, maybe it will get a push off this daily demand up to there. It did get a push, but it didn't make a higher high. Didn't also make a... Someone calling me, I'll just turn that off. You know, didn't make a higher high, and also didn't make, I think I put this in the group as well, and I said I was looking for it to make to close above that line to make a 3-day demand, which didn't happen. Actually, I don't want to delete that off there because that's sort of bounding the range. And then the same at the low, you know, if it closes below here, then it'll make a 3-day supply. But anyway, I mean, it's still holding this daily demand, but it's obviously come a lot lower in it, and it needs some more time consolidating before it decides which direction it's going to go. But the bias is now erring towards down due to having 12-hour supply above. So we shall see. You know, again, you can look for a long down here on the 4-hour demand if you want to, like maybe that'll pick up a higher low there. It's consolidating pretty tightly, so it's not horrendous. I might put an alert there just in case. It does just, mainly because it has the the daily demand there as well. So, you know, maybe it'll just retrace to the bottom of the daily demand. So I'll put an alert there, see what happens, but again, like it might come down and take out these lows. It's very early days, but at least it's a slow consolidation down, not an aggressive drop. I'm going to finish this list because it's being a bit slower, with a few more than I thought. Another one, so I had an alert go on this for 2 months supply. It hasn't quite hit the level, but you can watch this if it does want to move a little bit higher into that zone. Again, is it a reversal? Possibly. It's broken trend, but it's still under a major supply. Can go higher in supply, but it's still a major supply. So again, I'm just going, again, slightly more conservative on the long side, you know, 5-day, 1-week demand, but I've said leave it if it hits this 2 month supply first. Yeah, so I should probably delete that. But anyway, I don't know, maybe you can still watch that weekly if it comes down there. So made a weekly, made a new weekly, and it's obviously holding that weekly. I don't think it's actually, you probably can still consider that if it comes back down here, because it might still give a bounce to go higher inside the zone if the market's in the right place. So leaving that alert in there and see. Kilo, what was this? Okay, so this was okay, so that was, yeah, a high risk long entry. So I already had short entry on this at daily supply. So I do expect it to break the low, and it has actually come down pretty hard. It didn't create a 3-day supply, although it might today. So this long entry isn't great if that 3-day supply does get created today. Has had a bit of a bounce there, but again, you can see there's just very little history on the structure, so it's just a hit and hope, you know, is it going to make a higher low? So it has made a little higher low, but it's rejected off daily supply. I did put another short entry there for the 12-hour because, like I say, the overarching trend is still down. Even if it does give some consolidation, I still expect more down at this stage on this, unless I see some supply flip. Okay. Excuse me. So this was on the list because I had a break of trend. But I wanted a significant break of trend. So I said to the group, leave that. I think it broke, yeah, not very significant. I think I've moved the line down a bit actually, but it broke not very significantly here. So I said to the group, just leave it. I want it really to go below and make a daily supply. So at the moment it's not doing that. I've still got that trend line alert in there. I mean, it might pull a ban. And just do some crazy maneuver. Not sure if this is listed only on MEXC or on all the exchanges. No, it's only on MEXC. So yeah, anyway, I'd like to see this fall off the trend line. Whether it will or not is another matter, whether it goes up before it falls off the trend line. So yeah, when I say it might do a ban is because what ban did, I think, was fell off the trend line and then went like that. Or, I mean, obviously the other option is that it goes up and then drops. But yeah, I wanted a more definitive break of trend and then looking for supply. So again, just keep an eye on this. I wouldn't be shorting it right now. I mean, it has gone into 4-hour supply here, but yeah, just wait and see if it gives a supply that you can actually get a valid short on. Let me see if it's given anything on the 4 hour or anything. It does have a 4 hour supply in there, but it's up to you. I mean, it's still pretty early days and it's still holding demand, so this is a low probability short, but there is a 4 hour supply if you want to use that for a short entry. Mana. This is another one that's like hit. So it's kind of floating in the middle of nowhere at the low. I mean, it might have just swing failed that low, but really I would have wanted this down on weekly demand, or even, you know, down even lower on 2 monthly demand. For me, it's, you know, it's obviously in a slight downtrend here, but then that's making higher highs, but it's also making lower lows. So I guess a broadening wedge essentially. And yeah, so we might be at the point that we're going to get another move up. You know, obviously from around this area, it's gone up each time. But the problem with this is it had 3 months supply. So again, the alert went yesterday for 3 months supply. It's slightly front run the level. So I then moved the alert up a little bit because there's a weekly inside in case it comes back to take out that zone. But from a long perspective on this, I wouldn't want to be looking for a higher low at the moment because of coming off 3 months supply. If we go a lot higher, then maybe we're going to get more time and more bouncing around in between. But for now, I'm just looking for short. If we get a retest of here and or better structure, if it breaks this daily demand that it's got right next to price there, then potentially looking for shorts on that, or else a little bit higher in the zone. MDOG's hit just before the stream. So again, this is just hit into a monthly supply, and I did say again, you're looking for a swing failure because the alert also went there, but it didn't quite test the zone. This is a messy as hell chart. I don't know if it's got any other zones, so yeah, I might make a 3-day all the way down here today. And then we just need to see the closes to see whether this makes, you know, a weekly demand in there in the next few days. Just check 5-day or 5-day. Actually might make a 5-day at that same weekly level today. Yeah, I mean, this is not, just because it's a messy chart, this is not a level I would want to look for longs, even if it does confirm as the 3-day. But yeah, so hitting monthly supply, so I'm looking for short bias on this. So if you're brave and want to trade something with crazy wicks, and again, this is probably not listed anywhere else, I imagine, or it's very low volume. Yeah, it's just MICHI. Not ideal. MICHI was again another short entry. You know, still a very clear downtrend on this. No support here. Coming off weekly supply, so it was just an easy alert on weekly supply. There is a 2-week a little bit higher, I think. 2-week got tested, and it has a 3-day at the top there, so I might just reset that alert while I'm here. Oh no, I've already got the cross there. But yeah, just in case it comes higher, then, oh no, I do have the alert set already. If it does come a bit higher in the zone, then we've got this 3-day supply inside the 2-week up there that would be the next level of interest for a potential short. You know, again, longs on this if you want on daily demand. So you can look for longs here if you want, but the downtrend is still coming off the weekly, still expect a lower low. MOODENG on the flip side, you know, is actually much the same as MICHI, but I have put a long entry on this, or a potential, or I did put a potential long entry, mainly because it was very strong on, I think, Sunday, so I thought it was worth again for the volatility. It's also coming off weekly supply, it also has daily demand. I think I put the alert was actually on for the 4 hour, and it bounced very slightly above it, so you can still watch for that long, you know, if it does come down into this zone. Hold on, I might actually reset that. Yeah, so again, now obviously having hit the zone already, the ideal trade is looking for a swing failure, like it goes below that low and closes back above, ideally breaks some supply. See, that's a second possible entry there. But again, like MICHI, downtrend, hitting weekly supply, so very nice short entry, and then a little scalp for the long, but didn't get very far. NC, another short, just on 3-day supply, so again, that's, you know, done now, it's too late. But again, very just simple. You're just looking at simple retests, you know, in this case, if you really look at this, you know, it's come up, you know, it's made a 5-day supply or 4-day, it's come up, retested that area, dropped, made a new weekly, retested that area, dropped, and then, yeah, I don't know, it's, the difficulty on these, actually, the only real difficulty is that there's 5 days, 4 days, and 3 days, so it's like, which ones do you choose? So my pink lines are 5 days and 4 days, the black are are weeklies, and then 3 is 3 days. So it's just a question of how aggressive you want to be. But, you know, while we're in a simple downtrend, makes a 3-day supply test it, you know, makes a 3-day supply test it. And again, until I see some demand hold, like I don't want to assume it's going to hold. Things are looking slightly better than they have up here, at least, because we do have some more demand and there was some consolidation, but it's still pretty early days, and yeah, that's not a long I want to take on that. As we know, was just horrible, so obviously my alert went up here for like a weekly demand or a 2-weekly demand, I think was in there. But then it ran all the way back through. We had a monthly demand, it's run through that, and then we have this 3-week and the yearly level down there where I did set another alert for high risk, but it's actually bounced just above that, and even today it's trying to hold. But I don't know if this is just another lunar, you know, there was a Twitter, an X post that sort of implied that it was just a mistake and it was just forced liquidations or something like that. But I mean, that's normally what scammers say, just to get out of being a scam. So at your peril, do you look for longs on this, really? And I suspect it probably won't get back up to where it was, at least for a long period of time. ORCA's a funny one. So it's been a really nice one to trade both directions. But, you know, again, it's on a monthly demand, so I'm kind of a little bit wary. I'm aggressively shorting it, but I'm a little bit wary because it is holding this monthly. It has kind of formed this bigger potential higher low in there. Didn't quite get to my entry down on this daily demand here. Then I had an alert for 12-hour/1 hour supply inside it up there, so that went a little bit higher and rejected, and then I went for the retest, I think 2-hour supply entry here, which is being a bit slow, but that is a short you can still look at if you want to. Maybe there's better shorts but I mean, I guess this is higher risk than some of the shorts because of the uptrend, but then also better because if it does fall from here, it's got a lot more scope to fall. So, you know, if you took a short here with your stop just above there or even above this high, then it's got much higher risk to reward. I have put an alert here for the daily demand, even though I'd still prefer it to test the lower one. And the reason I did was just kind of looking back at previous PA. You know, we've got a very similar move here that retraced. In fact, I mean, that move at least did retrace to the start of the impulse, then a bounce in the lower high, and then just drifted def down, but, you know, didn't make a lower low. So we had a triangle come in there. So again, you know, it's possible here that if this did similar, that it might make a higher low and have the triangle structure kind of play out. So I gone with a slightly more aggressive alert for that. PROM. Okay, so my alert did go for that big drop down on daily demand there, and then I reset it in case it was going to come back, but it just bounced straight up from there, just slightly above the alert went, like I say, but slightly above where the actual zone was, and then back up into weekly supply. But I think, again, like, this is just a nasty chart, and I didn't really like. I was kind of considering whether I should look for short entries in this weekly supply, and then I think I decided against it and kept with just some more extremes because, yeah, it's just, that was such an aggressive drop down. I wasn't sure if it just might run straight back up through, and also because it left all the stops here, I wasn't sure if it might just run straight back up through. But anyway, I actually have an extra alert on that, so I might delete this one. Cannot be wasting 3 alerts on one chart. That's just craziness. Pump. Okay, so pump. Obviously this is one, and again I talked about this in previous streams because I was looking for shorts on it, and I actually said, oh, look, you know, at this point maybe this is going to reverse. I then did set an alert here on daily demand, but it never came back. It just kind of kept going. So that's actually, I think it was on here. Oh, excuse me. I think it was down here. The alert at that point, I think it had made an 8 hour in here. And then, yeah, so then I said in the group, you know, obviously it might not come back down there. I set it was supposedly more aggressive alert on 4 hour demand here. Hasn't got back there yet, but I did say, you know, you can look for longs on this 2 hour if you want to be bold. So that gave a little bit of a scalp. Then I thought we were going to create 12 hour supply. So this was a bit of a furphy, this alert actually. So it looked, I think, when I set that alert, like it was going to create 12-hour supply, but then it didn't. It did have 8-hour, but it wasn't the cleanest. The 12 would have been nicer. So I set alert saying, you know, there's this untested hourly inside the 12-hour, but the 12-hour hadn't confirmed. But anyway, it took a wick and obviously has dropped a little bit from there. And again, this is what I was saying before, you know, that when we have this ABC down and this consolidation with all these wicks, we are seeing quite commonly the wick come up into the next zone. Anyway, this still needs kind of a significant amount more time before I'm more comfortable shorting it. And maybe if this creates a daily supply at that level, I'd be more inclined to short it. But I would like to see, you know, if it's going to create a daily or this 12-hour, new 12-hour supply finally, I would like to see it kind of a lot lower. And then, yeah, so if you want to look for longs, there's that 4-hour there if you're feeling brave. PWEASE. So this is another one that's slightly front. So I front run my long entry at the 4-hour, so I've just left that in the same place. Slightly front run my short entry, so I reset it. And then I also said, you know, there's a 4-hour at the top of this daily zone if it does want to go a little bit higher. So there's a couple of zones there to look for shorts. If you want, again, this is one of those where it's just kind of run down. So it's so choppy here, it might just run through it. So just be a little bit careful. You look for confirmation before you enter. And again, you can long this daily if you want to. I wouldn't, just because there's not decent support here. So it's kind of more of a random low. And there's also obviously a new, it's made a new 12-hour demand, and then it's got a 4-hour supply that it's actually rejected there. So at this stage, it's looking like, I don't know what happened there. At this stage, it's looking like it's probably front run my short entry. And if it consolidates too long, then I'd be more wary of taking that trade as well. Like, really want it to come up and test it pretty quickly, not consolidate, find support, and then run through. Rome. It's another one, so it's in a daily supply. So this actually was looking for longs on, so I did call longs in the group around here. I said this looking interesting, like it's going to break out, but I didn't have an alert on it specifically. And then it has just obviously run up from there. I had a short alert, so it's now made actually a weekly demand in there. So let me check that. Oh, a 3-week. So now it hasn't confirmed the 3-week. If this confirms a 3-week demand, then I'll be significantly more bullish on it. At the moment, that level's just a weekly and it's offset by a couple of candles and there's a weekly down here. And I think I, again, was indecisively thinking, should I set an alert for a weekly, an entry on the weekly in here? And I decided against it because I think the likelihood of running those stops is too high and there's too much chop with 4 and 5 days and weeklies and things through there. If you want to, you know, try and get into this on a bounce, you know, that just look at, I would think of the immediate demand. So if it holds this daily or that 3 days, so if it holds around here, what's that, 20 cents to 22 cents kind of area, you can look for longs on that. Else, you know, I'm kind of short biased now being in daily supply, although it's pushing a little bit higher. It's had a lot of consolidation for this daily supply, so it doesn't surprise me that it's pushed a little bit up into there. But yeah, I'd be a little bit wary of entering this right now, but if it comes back down, you know, in 22 to 24 cents and holds, sorry, to 20 to 22 cents, holds here, then great, you might get another run up to here, else I'd be waiting probably for it to take out all the trend line stops. And it may, you know, there's an 8-hour demand there, but it may not even stop there. And if it takes those stops, it could well wick a lot lower. SERAPH is another one, again, I was trying to be bullish, but is kind of like failing me at the moment. It had a monthly demand and it came, so it bounced off the monthly, didn't make the higher low, came into the weekly lower, nice short off 5-day supply in there, and now is like retesting this 12-hour. But I think again it looks like it's made a 3-day supply. Yeah. So yeah, I'm kind of more skeptical about this one now. So it's made a 3-day supply. It tested it on the lower time frame, but hasn't tested it on this time frame yet. But it's a bit too, I may make a 5-day in there today as well. So yeah, I wouldn't be looking for longs on this based on that entry. Just run down the time frames quickly. But it's still a bit too tight to look for shorts, and because of the monthly demand, I don't want to look for shorts anymore on this. So either wait for it to come lower, you know, 4-day demand down there. It does have this horrible wick going all the way to 0 or something, but yeah, I wouldn't be looking for much local on this now. That should be a 4-hour, but it looks very brown. Yeah, given it hasn't really held there and is rejected off 3-day supply, I'm expecting this probably is going to go lower. SIREN, and again, another, just new. So we had some really nice shorts off the swing failure up here, and then the retest, and then a long re-entry, and another long re-entry worked well. It's another one that's got a bunch of stops here, so it's becoming risky to look for long entries in case it just wicks right back down to lower zones, and also might create a daily supply. So I think I put that there just so people had scalps today potentially. So it's, it was an 8-12 hour zone. I did get, you can see it did get a decent bounce off that, but then it's just come back into that daily level. So yeah, and I don't want to be looking for any more longs on this, because if this doesn't hold now, I think it's going to take out those stops, and maybe you'll get a long all the way down the bottom here, but also probably, with the swing fail there, then we expect it to take out this low ultimately. It's just a question of how much retest it gives in the interim. But yeah, a little bit careful on that one. SLC, another one I was wanting to be bullish on, but it then made a weekly supply, or it had the weekly supply for a long time, and I was really hoping it was going to push through it, but it didn't. And then I think it just got super messy. So it's got a 5-day supply, it's rejected off a few times. It made a 3-day demand, but not a good one. And it's got a 2-day in there actually, so that's kind of more interesting. Maybe it'll make a 4-day as well. No, I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, it's got a 2-day demand, but again, it's come off it already. So this, I don't know, is just messy. It needs some more time for consolidation, perhaps. Yeah, I had a long off the low on the 12-hour demand there, but it's, again, not getting very far, and it's still getting battered down by this weekly supply. So really you want to get a close up here somewhere to then make new demand before looking for new entries on this, because it's still just in a sort of sideways range scenario. As an example of one of those trend lines anyway, where I was sort of trying to get longs on the trend line and then learn my lesson when it kind of went through and then took out the lows and pumped straight afterwards. Got to learn your lesson. Where are we? SPX, only a few left now. How long have I been going for? Still almost 2 hours, so much for my quick stream. But quick at least on the first sort of things, rather than spending loads of time on Bitcoin, etc. So again, SPX, this I think just missed my 4-day or 1-month alert, and so I've reset that, and then because it kind of rejected just below there and in this 3-week supply, I kind of thought it was worth looking for a lower high. So I had that alert set there at the weekend, so obviously that's kind of had a reaction off there, actually slightly below. It still has daily and 3-day demand, and so it's still, yeah, unclear where that's going to go from here. It wouldn't have been the best short anyway, except just potentially for a scalp and then hold and see what happens, because it's still trying to make higher lows. If this comes a little bit higher, then just watch for that 4-day monthly potential reaction off the monthly up there. Failing that, if it does react off the monthly, I expect down here, and this is really a break retest scenario. I mean, maybe it'll hold. You can argue it would hold the bottom of the range here, or a little bit higher on those wicks. Let me have a look at what aligns. Yeah, if it comes back and it holds this orange line, then maybe it's just back inside that range and it's just a deviation below. But personally, I prefer supply and demand, so I would wait for a bit lower on that, or something to iron itself out a bit better. That's another one, sort of very new. It did have a decent reaction, so I had an alert for daily supply, which did react, but then has now subsequently held 12-hour demand, come back up, and has now made a new daily demand. So yeah, actually no, so it didn't go all the way down to 12 hours, so it had a reaction off there. It came back down into whatever 8-hour demand or something that was there, 8-hour demand, and now it's still holding here. So it's possibly worth an eye on this, because why is this not working properly? You can keep an eye on some of these. So because while they are still in downtrends, training views annoying me again now. While they are still in downtrends, obviously it's low time frame, and if it is going to make a reversal here, it is now making demand. So if it is going to make a reversal and hold, they can be, potentially get some big moves. So something like this, now it's made a daily demand and come off it. Like if I'd seen that, I probably would have set an alert there. Like I don't really want you to enter, late on something like this. You need to be entering at 76. and then your stop will be at break even by now if it still rejects this daily supply. But if you can find some sort of a low time frame pattern in here to trade, you know, like a trend line break or something, I know this is, again, isn't ideal because it's got the wicks on it, but you know, if you want to try and keep an eye on this and enter, you know, even if it's late for a move up, then by all means go ahead, because while the downtrend is still daily drop, we've still got this sort of bit of a risk of trend line stops down below as well. If it does want to break up from this triangle, it's got decent room to move if it wants to. TST, again, it was an aggressive short on this. I was kind of thinking, again, lots of trend line stops below. It's come up into 5-day supply. It had a 12-hour, I guess, in there, or 8-hour or something, 12-hour supply in there. So again, something that's still kind of high risk because it's on 3-day demand. It's coming off 5-day, 3-day demand, and it's like, at what point is this going to be ready to go down and take out all the stops? Could be, but it's early days. So you really want to, but again, multiple, at least it had multiple hits on this support. It's made a lower high. It has made new supply in there. So worth considering that this might give you a bigger breakdown at this point. And again, has scope for a decent breakdown if it wants to. Could come all the way back down to there. On the upside, you know, if that's wrong, then I would look for potentially a short in that weekly supply up there. Don't really like the wicks through it, actually. Don't really like the fact it's sort of wicked into there, but it is a weekly zone, so I'm going to alert that. Wasn't this sort of the fake coin that was made by Binance or somebody just for fun, and then everybody started trading it? Can't remember. But anyway, see what happens on that. But yeah, sort of obviously preference for better longs on that would be all the way down here. You know, whether that's the low is guessing, because you know it hasn't even hit the top of that wick. I mean, it's pretty close, but you know, maybe it's picked up the top of that wick for support. Maybe the wick is higher on other exchanges. I don't know, but for me, you know, I would kind of be liking to look for this to break down. If you want to be safer on something like this, that 4-hour demand again that's gone on MOODENG. Yeah, if you want to be safer, you're waiting for it to, you know, breaks through some of this demand, and then you're shorting a retest of this kind of area in the bigger picture. Once it's flipped some of these 3-day, daily, 5-day, whatever, to supply, that's the better short on this. This is sort of, again, early entries, similar to the early entries on longs that are higher risk. UXLINK, okay, nice, very nice rejection on the 2-week supply up there. Did actually make a 12-hour, so I'm going to bring this down. I think, again, I was a little bit in two minds, but I like a clean 12-hour like that with a big move away from it. I think I was in two minds, yeah, because this, again, has come back down into like 3-day daily demand, which you can see I had alerted on the long side, but obviously it's now not got a bounce, very much of a bounce at all on that. Maybe, so it hasn't made a daily supply, but has made a 12-hour supply in there. And is kind of drifting lower. So I'd be more inclined, you know, and again, this is, I think, yeah, has the scope to potentially, like it's holding a 4-hour demand here, but again, 1, 2, 3 tests. If it can't break up, you know, it has broken up. I think I was in two minds on the short, and I think that's because it broke the trend line. I was kind of like, maybe I shouldn't, you know, if this is higher, low, higher, low, higher, low, then this could run through here. But, you know, when it's had a clean drop off a 12-hour like that, then I think it's worth looking for shorts on the retest, similar to ORCA, in fact, which, you know, is, so let's go back to ORCA quickly. You know, it's got that drift all the way down, but then it's, you know, comes up, hits the 12-hour supply and does give a re-entry. It may or may not work from here, but it's that similar kind of structure on UXLINK, potentially, you know, where it's got a drift down. Let's see who's messaging me. Yeah, it's got a drift down, so we'll just see what happens from there. Von, yeah, this is just nasty. So I had, again, a short, well, long that worked, long that got run through, and then a short that took a massive wick through it. So I think I just decided to leave that alone after that. Again, like, I don't know if it's just a MEXC, yeah, just a MEXC coin, so very low volume, and yeah, just obviously quite quite risky to trade. And you know, it is on a weekly demand, so if you want to kind of, you know, buy based on this weekly and hold, these can be like test pumps. They are wiping out a lot of the shorts, which is good. Sorry, we're wiping out wiping out a lot of the shorts, but wiping out the resistance for it to go back up. The sellers, you know, people are taking profit, but yeah, I don't know, with this kind of messiness, it makes me more reluctant to look for trades on that. I actually did get a reaction off that level that I had, but then wicked through before actually getting the bigger reaction. And then finally WAV, I think, so I had this short entry, I think I talked about this in my last stream, 3-day supply and then 12-hour, 8-hour inside it, dropped down from there, and then I've reset for a possible retest again, just assuming at this stage that this downtrend is going to continue. It's a bit of a bigger zone than I wanted there. I think, yeah, there's a 4-hour and then also a 1 day. And the 1 day kind of was tested on an immediate test. Bit of a bigger zone than I would want there for the 4-hour. But I think it's worth, yeah, watching if it's going to get the retest up there. And that's everything. So that's all the alts that have gone in the last few days. So hopefully, I think a lot of those, you know, have played out already, but hopefully I've given you some ideas for some things that maybe you can keep watching and seeing if you can get new entries on. A quick look at what Bitcoin's done since I've been on this stream. Okay, so it is holding this 12-hour demand, but it obviously hasn't gone very far back up off there yet. And Ether's looking also slightly more ropey now on that swing fail of the high. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Bitcoin at least will maybe give us another few hours of consolidation here and allow alts to do a bit more. So another few hours, maybe another day or two, and allow alts to go a bit further. See what Nasdaq's doing. Yeah, so I mean, again, the indices are just going sideways, so basically that's exactly what we're seeing for Bitcoin. Right, so I have to run. I'm flying out to Thailand tomorrow to try and sort my health out and try and quit smoking, so wish me luck. And I will stream from out there if I can. Hopefully it'll be okay. I've got I did read one comment on the hotel saying the Wi-Fi is ropey, so I don't know if that's going to be great, but I'll get mobile anyway just to sort of see, and hopefully that will be enough to be able to stream, or at least I can record videos and post them. Maybe would be the safer way of doing it. But yeah, please feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Please join my Telegram channel, and then you can ask any questions you want in there if there's any anything you want to know, anything you want charted. Yeah, I hope also, all my charts have disappeared on this. Hopefully I also have given you enough possible trades. Obviously zones, as always, are trading as and when they're hit. You're looking for a lower time frame inside the higher time frame. We don't trade anything blindly. And I feel like sort of people are struggling a bit lately because of the sideways action, which I obviously tend to like more than anybody else. Really just pick if the zone you're in, just pick a time frame that you're willing to accept. Like you don't really want to be on the 1 minute or 3 minute, but maybe you want to be on the 15 minute or the hourly, or if you're trading a higher weekly or something like that, maybe you want to be on the 12 or 8 hour to actually look for trade entries once a zone hits. Alts, you can probably be a bit lower time frame, but Bitcoin you still want to be a reasonable time frame. Yeah, so anyway, please like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good evening.